Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special event of the Mediation Beyond COVID interview with the amazing business leader that is Sarah Blake. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. And we are here to talk about this brainchild of yours that is Mediation Beyond COVID, where you called in some really phenomenal leaders and in your space, in the mediation space, to share their stories, but also lots of different, it's quirky and everything. And I love this book so much. Your vision has come to fruition, but it wasn't such an easy process, was it? But before we talk about that, can you share a little bit about this book so that everybody can understand your why behind pulling it together?
I would love to. Look, this book really emerged from a wonderful experience I had during COVID. For many of us, we've had highs and lows of COVID, things that have gone well and things that have really not gone well. One of the things that happened in my professional group of network is that we got together over Zoom across the Tasman. So between Australia and New Zealand, there's a group of maybe 8 of us that would catch up weekly initially when things hit. And we'd just kind of drink a glass of gin together or 2, or maybe 3, depending on how long we talked. And we'd share the stories of the struggles of how do we do this mediation work in the middle of a pandemic, and what are the dramas everyone's dealing with, or just being a safe place for people to express what's going on for them. And as this went on and COVID, I guess the restrictions got less, we caught up less. But it also got me thinking about how powerful those stories were and how useful it was for me. And wouldn't it be great if we could share some of that with the ordinary, everyday person that doesn't have the advantage? Because conflict really increased. And I think that it's not going away post-COVID. We're having to deal with a whole bar of different complexities. And I wanted to help give people a bit more confidence to be able to navigate that messy space of life. And so I called together some of these amazing people, not just mediators, not just lawyers, but HR professionals, CEOs of global companies, people, consultants, we've got, I think, 20 authors from 10 countries, and I am so proud of all of them.
Yeah, it's just like it goes to show when you set the ball in motion for a vision, set a target and just bring it all together, but to allow us to have insight, to be like flies on the wall as to what these conversations were. Like you really should have recorded them at the time. The free flowing gin conversations.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a ride.
Yeah, but you guys were a support network for each other so that you could support others. That's what I love about this as well, is that, when COVID hit, goodness, mediation and conflict was a huge thing personally and in our environment. Our worlds were being turned upside down, literally.
Absolutely.
And then you guys were able to be there to support each other, to be able to support others. It's such a powerful thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of our authors, Shanti, talked about the mediation profession as being part of that second wave of responders. We had our first responders, and we as mediators, dispute resolvers, problem solvers, were the ones that were helping deal with those rental crises, with the family breakdowns that were happening, with the businesses that just didn't know what to do, and irate and angry people, and the confusion in the community. So in a sense, we had an opportunity to step up, and many people did step up and into, but there was so much that we also needed to carry ourselves. So how were we self-caring? How were we nurturing ourselves to be able to hold these conflict and messy spaces?
So that leads right into gin.
Yes. Of course it does. Honestly.
I'm really only joking. But the theme of the book, on the book cover, it's gin bottle.
Yeah.
Gin is one of your go-to drinks. We see it on your socials. It's so fun. And I love how you just say, oh, I've earned this gin or whatever. Yeah. And you certainly have. But why the whole gin theme?
I think, well, I've been a gin drinker for forever and a day, to be honest. And when I first started drinking gin, it wasn't popular. It was one of those, you drink gin, aren't you an old lady? Or, one of those things. Yeah, I was a 20-year-old drinking gin and tonics. What's going on here? Admittedly, I was in the tropics, so it was very enjoyable up in the tropics. But I think for me that this notion of coming together over a glass of gin, some of the best mediators I know also drink gin, and we've kind of got this running joke that if you don't drink gin, you're just not in the in crowd. But
Not in
it,
if you don't drink
yeah.
gin. That rhymes.
I think it's just this recognition of, hey, let's sit down and let's have a conversation. And whatever it is, whether it's hot chocolate, whether it's an iced tea, whether it's sitting around the campfire, but this notion of the drink itself is sipped slowly. It's not a drink that you guzzle. It's not a drink that you drink to get drunk. You're just sitting down, enjoying the pleasure of a really nice drink with some good friends and a good company, and just being able to shoot those stories off.
Yeah. You're still welcomed with a sparkling rosé wine, though, aren't you?
Of course.
But that's right, because conflict and, you know, all mediation can be a heavy topic. It can be heavy in your heart and heavy to be part of. And I love that the gin aspect of it is the lighter, fun part that you have brought into this book. So can we just talk about how important it was for you to lighten the mood of this book so that you can deliver the message? It can still reach people, but in an easier way.
Yep, absolutely. Look, no one wants to talk about conflict at all. No one has conflict in their lives if they had their own way. And I was once told that I couldn't put myself out as a speaker because no one wants to hear about conflict. And my thing was, well, if we don't talk about it, how are we going to deal with it? We need to be able to have the conversation, but we need to be bringing lightness, making it accessible. I want to have fun. This is hard topics, but they don't have to be hard work, and great things can come from them. And when we bring some of that light energy, it actually opens the space for problem solving and creativity. So look, having gin on the front cover is a reminder that not everything has to be dark and heavy, that we can bring joy and fun. And that was, you know, I've really wanted to include some doodle images throughout the book, some graphics, because I think that again lightens the mood of the conversation and keeps it real, because none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, and we've got to have fun. And I know a lot of what you and I have talked about, Karen, over the last year or so, is that through COVID, through everything else, that where's the fun, where's the kindness, where's the joy? We're making that a priority, not just the heaviness of this is so hard.
Yeah. And when you prioritize joy is my word for this year, and success is aligned with joy. That's where you find real success, your definition of success, your true one. I went totally off script. We have some questions to ask, so I'm going to stand.
Go off script is much more fun, right?
Follow the rules.
I'm good with that.
But I do want to know if you can tell us a bit about some of the authors who have contributed to this book. Just give them a little bit of a highlight there so that we can get to know everyone.
We sure can. Look, my when I started this book, my thought was, who would I like to do the forward of the book? Like putting aside all notions of, no, they would never do that for me. The pie in the sky person was Kenneth Cloke, and he's kind of like the grandfather of the mediation world. He was telling me the other day, he's been doing this work for 46 years, and he bridges the space between business and commercial. He helped set up Mediators Beyond Borders International, and he was a man that has been very vocal during COVID around peacekeeping, and particularly issues around Ukraine, Russia issue, all of those things. And I was so humbled that he said yes, and he's written the forward for us. So I guess I'm overwhelmed that he said yes, and he sets a tone.
Isn't it, Sarah? Bucket list when you get your person that you want to endorse your book.
It was incredible. Yeah, I did. So he was my first preference, and he said yes. But look, we've got people from across the world, which I love because they all bring their own lens to the conversation. We've got Mikhail Sanspans, who is in Thailand. He's got a great story because he's come relatively new to mediation, but he's working in a field of renewable energies, and he has worked in Scotland. He lived and grew up in Spain, so there's real cultural diversity and some really challenging spaces. We've got Roar Thun Wagner from over in Norway, and he's doing some amazing work. We've got Paul Sills, who was New Zealand, now living in the UK, an incredible barrister and mediator, but also businessman. So he gets the difficulties of business, not just the legalities of mediation. And so I love that. We've got Vikram from India. Vikram was so heavily involved in India in establishing conversations. I think he's done over 146 interviews over the last few years. And Vikram Singh is really around helping us talk about what it means to be peacemakers. And so we've got him, we've got who else is on my list? Shanti Abram Matthews. Now, she's from Malaysia, and she was instrumental in Malaysia in bringing mediation as a second response to communities dealing with high levels of conflict. She's so proactive in her industry. We've got Susan Andrews, who from the US, who has been doing online mediation before it really became a thing during COVID. So hearing from her about suddenly she was now an expert in a field that she was relatively new to as a mediator, but had built these skills for online from the get-go. We've got Lawrence Boyle, who is an incredible mediator in Australia, and he's been in the business of teaching and conducting mediations for such a long time. He, in a sense, is like the Australian version of Ken Cloke. And so to have him in the book and sharing his insights, I think grounds it in the Australian context. And that's a real privilege. I could keep going on. Do you want me to keep going on, or should we leave it?
People in this book. We're not going to go, and don't worry, everyone's equally wonderful in the book. Yes. Just because Sarah hasn't said your name doesn't mean that you're not an amazing contributor to this book, but it's just that it's a celebration of those people showing up, and also every single story is different, isn't it? Even though you're talking about the same topic, mostly everyone works in the same field, so like everything's so different. But can you tell me what was it that surprised you during the process of doing this book, Sarah?
A couple of things that surprised me, that even though everyone comes from really different backgrounds, some of them work in similar industries, but some of them don't. But there were some real consistencies across the stories that were being told. And those consistencies were themes around the emotional impact of COVID, and how, for leaders in particular, resilience is a little bit low. So how we've had to start looking at emotion in workplaces differently, and how we as leaders need to be thinking around how we lead both others and ourselves. And I think that was a really interesting insight, that across everywhere there was this common thread. And the other one that really stood out was everyone's conversations indirectly had this element of, this period caused me to reassess or think about sustainability and the environment and those big conflicts really differently. So how do we deal with, what is our role, what is our responsibility in as humans on this planet?
Yeah, absolutely. We all have to be responsible and show up, don't we, for our planet? If there's anything that we all need to take from the experience. So what do you hope people take away from reading this book? You know, who's your reader? Do we have to be in mediation to enjoy this book?
No, absolutely not. I was really conscious of making it not for mediators, actually, which sounds really contradictory. But I wanted this book to be for, do you manage a team of people? Are you in a position of leadership in your organisation, a CEO, or just a chair of a not-for-profit in a community? So it's all of us that have leadership responsibilities and dealing with the messiness of people. And what I hoped was that you would read this book and find some tips to say, hey, it's not just me dealing with this messy stuff. It's not just me having to deal with conflict and I don't like it. Hey, I'm not the only one feeling that way. And guess what? There's hope. There's some useful tips that I can get through this, that I don't have to ignore it. That, hey, here's some really useful, practical little things that I could do to make a difference. And that's what I hope is ultimately that they read this book and can put it down and say, I'm not alone and we will get through this.
Hope and knowledge just eradicates fear, doesn't it? Yep. And it's fears where the anger and all of those negative things come from. It's unbelievable. Yep. So what is your personal experience of dealing with conflict during COVID, Sarah?
So much. So much. Where do you even start with that question, right?
Oh,
I'm a mum of 2 kids, and my husband's in the Defence Force. For those of you that know me, know this story. So he was away a lot during COVID because he was providing frontline intervention and support services. I was having to homeschool my kids. Run my own business, so I was like a lot of people out there, teaching my kids, caring for my kids, trying to run a business. The internal conflicts regularly cropped up. I think it tested my relationships
mm,
because it brought to the surface all those fracture points we had, both as a family and around us, and
yeah,
we had to reassess around what matters to us, what's important, how are we going to do this together in a really pressure environment. So in terms of that internal stuff, what I learned from it was that I could walk the talk of the business that I do. It's no
mm,
use doing it as a peripheral outside thing. I had to internalize the capacity to be a peacemaker internally. And so I found a real strength and calm and a confidence in I can do this
yeah,
and I can do it well. So it allowed me to not take on board stuff that wasn't mine to take on. It allowed me to really prioritize self care. I didn't feel the burnout that many other people felt because I was already caring for myself in that. I didn't feel the overwhelm in the end because I put structure in place to help me manage it. Not to say I didn't have bad days or bad months, but there was this sense of it will be okay. It didn't overwhelm me. And I think that helped me bring empathy to my clients, to my colleagues in a much more practical and meaningful way.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. And like that's so important, the self-care, especially when you're bringing on the energy of others and that
Yeah.
heaviness and carrying that, you do have to prioritize that. So
Yeah.
how do you have fun and relax after doing this type of work?
Oh, look, your kids keep you
It's not
grounded,
just
right?
all about gin. It's not all just about
It's
gin.
actually not, and I actually haven't been drinking much gin lately either. I'm letting the side down. Kids keep you grounded. I don't think there is any choice not to be when you've got 2 boys and they're very active. But I love my beach time. I've actually started doing walking a lot more, so I'm back into my walking and starting the day doing that and having some me time is wonderful. So good walking, getting out, doing activities with the kids. I'm very conscious of trying to find moments of joy, and they might be micro moments. So, just connecting with nature or picking flowers from my garden and bringing them inside. And I get a lot of energy from the connections with my friends. And, whether it's going out for a coffee or just picking up the phone and having conversation, those are the things that nurture my soul. And it's about prioritizing those and really getting out with nature.
It is, isn't it, about being mindful of those things and
Yeah.
aware and harnessing, it fills your cup, those types of
Yeah.
moments when you allow it to. And then
Yeah.
it energizes you to keep above the line,
That's
you
right.
don't fall below it. It's
Yeah. Look,
so,
I nearly forgot one, Karen, before we
oh,
jump on. I did start dancing again this year, just been, so 2022. And I have to say, when I was young and, hitting the clubs, and I just love to dance. And so
yes.
last year I got back to doing my dancing, and the hips don't move like they're meant to. I've totally uncoordinated. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm having fun. And I think that's probably one of the highlights of some of the joy.
Oh my God. I didn't know that about you and like that you loved hitting the clubs. I did too in my 20s. We'll have to do it sometime. That will not be for
That
any
won't be
audience.
online.
It'll just be in memory and something that fills your cup.
That's right.
Oh, it's such an amazing book, and it's so important for people who are leaders in their own life to take on board a lot of what this book shares, because it is being gifted to us. These stories and knowledge are being gifted to us as strategies to be able to apply it. As a reader, I was a reader as much as I was a publisher. We're gifted strategies, and what we resonate, we can really take on board and apply to our lives and have a positive impact moving forward.
Yeah.
So this book is really important, Sarah. It's really important. Is there anything else you want to share with everyone before we tie up?
Yep, there's probably one more thing that I can share. Is the other thing I'm really proud about this book is that profits from the sales are going to Mediators Beyond Borders Oceanic, and so that's a not-for-profit. It's a sister organisation from Mediators Beyond Borders International, and their focus is here in Australia and the Pacific region and Southeast Asia. And what this money will do, so you all need to buy a book so that we can give money to this really worthwhile cause. They will be using this resource to help bring together First Nations people, Pacific Islanders, traditional owners together to talk about the business of peacemaking. How do we tackle these big issues in a way that empowers sometimes the most silent voice? How do we support the business of peacemaking at a much more macro global scale, not just in our everyday lives? So I'm really proud to be helping to raise their profile and to supporting them. And by buying a book, you actually support peacemaking in our region.
And that's the thing, you can fill up your karma cup too, as well as get the knowledge. I love it so much. Whenever there's always a good cause behind it. And one of the things I know about you, Sarah, and a lot of mediators that you have around you, is that you always, there's conflict creates change, positive change in quite many scenarios, but when it's managed well, and when you have an intention of finding the best case solution for everyone involved, because there's not just one side, there's two sides, and you have to find a harmonious middle ground. And that's, and I always admire how you do that, and how you do it so well. You do it with such ease. I'm sure you're a swan gracefully striding across the river, and you're paddling like crazy underneath, but you just do it and make everyone at ease. But you've got this presence that you're able to, and this book is that. I think it's that it gives us a guiding light to be able to make those changes and have the courage to face conflict. Conflict is not something I enjoy myself personally, but I've learned how to lean into it. That's your word, leaning into it. And not fearing it, because it brings about positive change. So we all need to learn that, don't we, Sarah?
We do, we so do. And that's that notion of hope, right? We all have conflict in our daily lives, and we don't actually want a world without it. We just want to be able to lean into it and manage it well. So thank you for saying that, because I think when we learn to bring some grace and some calm to those chaotic moments, great things can happen.
Yes. There's a quote. We're going to finish on that. And thank you so much to everyone who has joined us. We've got Joanne, we've got Katie, we've got Lisa. Thank you so much for your comments. And we will pop in and answer those now after the fact. If you want to grab your copy, the best place to go to is the KMD Books website, because then we can have more profits for the cause in there. And watch out, because we're going to be doing a #1 Kindle campaign to get this book to #1, because it deserves to be a best-selling book, and that will be live today. So watch out for my socials, Sarah's socials, KMD Book socials, so because we will be pumping out those links. So fill your karma bank even more and have that happen. We really appreciate all of the support. So thank you to everyone for joining us, and thank you, Sarah, for showing up. And this book, the process was everything that it is.
That's right.
It was supposed to be,
That's exactly right.
And now you've got a book to be proud of. So huge kudos to you.
Thank you. It's been a ride, and I'm really grateful. So yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.